My name is Christoph Brunner, and here is Jonas Fritsch. You have 20 minutes.
Start right away with our presentation, Human Energetics in an Era of Post-Humanism, and I hand over.
Okay, so I'll just push this one. Which one do I push? Excellent. Okay, so hello everybody. So we just want to say thanks. It's a pleasure being here, and we're very happy to present this paper. It's a part of a decade-long engagement with a transdisciplinary exploration of the work of Gilbert Simondon and his what we would like to call non-phenomenological conception of experience. And we've tried to develop that through the notion fields of experience, and we had the pleasure of presenting it at ISEA in 2020, so there's more work out there. And with fields of experience, we address a composite reality where perception is not of the world or the perceiving subject, but in the relation or par le milieu. And we also encourage you, of course, to read the other publications in relation to this. Okay.
Okay, to start with the topic, we need to start problematizing the human. So in the wake of an increasingly differentiated debate on the status of the human in the era of post-humanism and the Anthropocene, major critiques of Eurocentric humanism are at the heart of the arts and humanities today. Instead of turning towards the agency of non-humans or celebrating the vibrant matter, a more than human account tuned to the status of the human requires a radical rethinking of what a non-Eurocentric conception of the human and humanities might look like. So we find such lines in the works of Donna Haraway, for instance, her 1989 text, Ecce Homo, engaging with the abolitionist feminist Sojourner Truth, and the recently intensified attention for the Jamaican intellectual Sylvia Wynter and her anti-colonial critique of Western Enlightenment humanism. Humanities building on such a post-humanist conception of the human has been a major concern of French philosopher of technology Gilbert Simondon, whose work in the 1950s and 1960s has not only formulated a relational conception of change and becoming, but is also deeply concerned with a transformation of the humanities into what he terms a science humaine and a human energetics.
Simondon most thoroughly develops his notion of energy and human energetics in his magnus opus, Individuation in Light of Notions of Form and Information, Individuation à la lumière des notions de forme et d'information, collected and published in 2005, but containing work from 1964 and onwards. In this work, Simondon explores the notion of energy as that which makes form-taking and change possible in processes of individuation across organic, physiological, social, technical, and psychological systems. He also calls them material, vital, and mental. Energy, and more precisely potential energy, as an analytical category allows Simondon to conceptualize processes of individuation that are always tied to a system and its state of stability. In his notes from the lecture Form, Information and Potentials, he most explicitly develops the notion of human energetics as a non-equivalence-based model of thinking relations between form and information. In the lecture, Simondon proposes human energetics as the foundation for developing a unified human science, or science humaine, apologies for the missing E. And he says, quote, "In any case, we would arrive at the idea according to which a human science must be founded on a human energetics and not just on a morphology. A morphology is quite important, but an energetics is necessary. One would have to ask why societies transform, why groups change in accordance with the conditions of metastability," end quote. So while Simondon aims at a broad reworking of the humanities as closely linked to the sciences, his emphasis on the human should not be mistaken. In his transductive account of potential energy, we perceive a strong refusal of any anthropomorphic conception of the human as different from technologies or its organic and inorganic environment. In this sense, the human energetics in a Simondonian key is a transhumanist, where the human becomes a composite of different energetic relays. Simondon insists that morphology, the taking or changing of form, requires the addition of energy in order to understand the general processes of transformation as informational exchanges. For his human science, the principle or paradigm provides an axiomatic approach that foregrounds the non-foundational process of energy-oriented in-hyphen formation. And with this insistence on information, Simondon narrows the problem of change down to the question of what drives change and how change operates along a field of potential energies rather than a mere cause and effect logic. The field, according to Simondon, is a virtual queuing of potential energies to inform the energies immanent to a domain, which is the ensemble of reality that can receive a structuration. So this was a kind of a quick tour de force of some of the most important Simondonian concepts. And then, of course, we'd like to contextualize this with respect to some broader perspectives. And so we'd like to talk a bit about the energy humanities and also energies in the arts. In their article from 2014, The Rise of Energy Humanities, authors Dominique Boyer and Imre Zeman forcefully state the need for a humanistic take on current energy dilemmas. And we have another quote. Energy humanities is an emerging field of scholarship that overcomes boundaries between disciplines and between academic and applied research. Like its predecessors, energy humanities highlights the essential contribution that the insights and methods of the human sciences can make to areas of study and analysis that were once thought best left to the natural sciences. So we see the proposed human or general energetics as encompassing a heterogeneous, diverse understanding of different kinds of energies across a number of different kinds of domains. Another important point of reference, and also in particular of relevance for this community, of course, is Dr. Kahn's comprehensive introduction to the anthology Energies in the Arts from 2019. And here, Kahn presents a pluralistic approach, which he also calls an indefinition of energies, to the very different and plural energies in the arts and how they are often found in different kinds of artistic expressions and artistic practices. And he reports, for instance, on a fundamental energetic transformation in the arts when music went from metabolics and acoustics to electrical and electronic music. And here's another quote, transduction back and forth between two classes of energy, acoustics and electromagnetism, not only fundamentally changes the character of the production, modulation, amplification, transmission and storage of music, it also set up new relations of control and lack thereof for the performer and composer. End quote. So, whereas Kahn does not make any explicit references to the vocabulary of Simondon, we see a lot of shared concepts, for instance, the fields, the transductions, and interests that we also think is important to emphasize here.
Thanks. So now that we have encountered a Simondonian take on energy and visited the energy humanities and energy in the arts, I would like to draw back on the post-colonial critiques of humanism. As we have seen so far, a humanist take on energy requires us to radically rethink the status of the human to begin with. Particularly feminist Marxism, feminist science studies, and post-colonial theories draw on the historic coupling of colonialism to Eurocentric enlightenment. Silvia Federici, amongst others, has detailed such intricacies in her book The Caliban and the Witch, where a specific mode of enlightenment thinking propagates an othering of women, people of color, non-Christians, slaves, and migratory minorities traversing Europe and crossing the Atlantic Ocean. The central principle of this Enlightenment logic is rationalization through abstraction. Glasses sliding. This process dovetails with the rendering of human bodies into energy resources for extractivist endeavors, but also rendering these bodies disposable. Sylvia Wynter terms the enlightened, that is, humanist notion of the human man with a capitalized N, in order to foreground the proposition for a critical reworking of the category of the human. It is here where we see an encounter between these critiques of enlightenment as a rationalizing and divisive principle as part of also Simondon's project of the so-called sciences humaines. Thanks. Thinking along these lines, our conception of the post-human requires us to consider energy as a key factor. Minding energy in its transductive key means to account for its relational capacity to traverse material, technological, embodied aesthetic and perceptual domains. Simondon's insistence on potential energy rejects a purely quantitative model of energy as measurable value, which resonates both with a mathematic and capitalist rationalization. Of course, Simondon contests that. However, for Simondon, the principle of exploitation as capitalist rationalization is insufficient, and this is interesting. He insists on a more profound theory of alienation, that between human and technical being. This kind of logic works against the general equivalent of energy in thermodynamics, but it also is in relation to the subjection of matter as a carrier of energy to a human will, so the classic holomorphic scheme that Simondon details in many places. In her post-humanist critique, which engages Sojourner Truth's famous utterance, "Ain't I a woman?" Haraway casts the experience of dehumanization in the figure of the black woman. According to Haraway, Sojourner Truth's entire existence has been rendered inexistent in light of a normative, white, patriarchal, and colonial conception of the human. Her cry urges a new conception of the human that refuses the violent exclusion, that is, a different humanity. For this to happen, we require to use Sylvia Wynter's words. For this to happen, we require to use Sylvia Wynter's words taken from Frantz Fanon, a, quote, concrete and even new understanding of man, man not capitalized, another human science, or science humaine. Our move with Wynter, Haraway, and Simondon then aims towards a different humanity that is not objectifying and that accounts for transductive forces of potentiality, that is, for human energetics. Thermodynamic energetics abide by an extractive logic of energy immanent to the Enlightenment thought in the sciences and the humanities, actually, but also colonial practices. In these, human energy is the exploitative enterprise of slavery and the deterioration of natural resources, the dehumanization of the other, non-white human being in the wake of colonization as a general move of objectification. So the pressing question for post- and decolonial critiques of colonial or Eurocentric Enlightenment is, who is worth being considered a human being? Where the critiques of post-colonial objectivization logics of energy and Simondon's critique of a quantitative energetics of thermodynamics meet is in the point that neither of them accounts for potential energy. And Catherine Yusuf relates to such a constant practice of rendering matter inhuman and subjects inhumane, and there is the kind of collapsing of the dehumanization of the energy, slave energy, and matter as being subjected to a humanist will. So the energetic twist in Yusuf's work is the coupling of matter as the non-human or inhuman, interlaced with the enslaved subject as rendered inhumane. In the sense of uncivilized, being uncivilized, to use a Central Enlightenment term, so inhuman as uncivilized. This double move of energetic objectivization overcoats any account of potential energy or a different humanity as detailed before. So we want to close with an open question. Simondon insists on change and form-taking through non-quantitative potential energy. Haraway points out the poetic singularity of truth that requests another sense of the human. And Wynter follows Fanon to insist on a new concept of human sciences that takes on a new social form. Form and change actually matter. They move through matter. A general and human energetics moves with the energies at stake. We ask for the constitution of a human that acts by being energetically engaged. To give an idea of how such glimpses of a new human energetics becomes apparent, we show a video still of Nigerian artist Otobong Nkanga's short video work, Remains of the Green Hill. The artist stands in front of the retired Tsumbe copper mine in Namibia. The pit lies bare. while the industrial buildings at the horizon mark the ruins of extractive capitalism. A recorded interview with the mine's former manager accompanies the artist's alternating yoga poses with a rock on her head. While the manager muses on a potential repurposing of the site for leisure activities, the relation between black body, rocks, light, and air fuse into a constant affective relaying of energies. It is here where we see a different humanism in the era of post-human to emerge. Matter is not the object and the human not objectified. They are energetically potentiating the taking of form. This form is metastable but nonetheless expressive of the political intricacies at play in a late liberal, still colonial and extractive present. Thank you. We actually have time for questions. I don't know what the organizers.
Je ne sais pas si ce qu'en pensent les organisateurs.
We know this differs from the procedure. Apologies for that. But it's also a way of activating energy in a different form of relaying. Yes, potential questions are the best. Always in the back, yeah.
Hello. Thank you for your thorough unpacking of this area. And I may have missed your point, but I was curious about the potential for siding with the non-human as a political action. So rather than trying to argue to be human, what if we were to side with the object or the non-human?
Could you just repeat the last part, sorry?
I'm interested in the political implications of siding with the non-human. Is that a strategy that we could use to think through these particular problems?
It was still difficult for me to understand acoustically, I'm sorry. But if I may, I give it a go?
Yeah, go on.
So I guess you're pointing at our problematizing of evoking the non-human. And I think one of the concerns that is a bit more elaborated in the paper is that some parts of post-humanist discourses or contemporary post-humanist discourses, that's why we refer to Haraway, which did that quite early actually in '89, her paper, is that there is a depoliticization, a potential depoliticization by leaving the agency with matter. And that we think, like from Winter, Yusuf, the people we evoked, there is this kind of reinsurgence of the human. Is not a humanistic reinsurgence of the human, but it keeps this kind of political agency in place between action and doing and creating and matter. It doesn't extrapolate activity into the non-human or more than human. And that's what we're trying to do in this paper, to work this kind of, and energy is a segue into that, a first attempt, let's say.